Captain's Log Supplemental. If I have one more crew member, jokingly recommend we visit a nearby starbase so that they can spin the station stop and Starfleet Go, I will shove them into one of those retro torpedo coffins and launch them into the closest black hole. This last Ambassador Spock grind event is making everyone lose their minds.
Everybody, welcome to Captain's Log Supplemental. I'm joined, as always, by Chris.
Hello.
And Rob.
Hi.
And I'm, of course, Stanford. I was trying to catch Chris while he had his mouth full.
Peanut butter crackers, too, so it was
no.
all on the roof of my mouth.
Aaron Burr. Remember that fucking milk commercial from the 90s?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Captain's Log Supplemental is a Star Trek rewatch podcast. We are rewatching all of the televised Star Trek series in chronological universe order. It's already been a long time.
Long road.
Getting from there to here.
Yeah, we would be very much appreciative if you would take just a moment to rate, review, tell your friends about us. Let us know, what you think of the show. Send us an email, reach out to us on Twitter, X, whatever the hell that shit's called these days. And, just generally give us some engagement. That's pretty much what we're looking for. Before I get to this week's rather disappointing episode, have you all seen the latest Indiana Jones movie?
I saw there was one. But then after the Crystal Skull movie, I have completely avoided it.
Yeah, well, Mariah and I watched it last night, actually.
Sorry.
Yeah, there's a lot more time buttholes than one would expect.
Well,
please elaborate.
No, I can't. I don't want to spoil it. You'll have to watch it.
Oh, God.
There were at least two.
Okay. Yet more reason not to watch it.
Yeah. All right. So, this week's episode is called Vanishing Point. Now, the astute listeners of the show would notice maybe that we've been kind of going in a rather patterned cycle between who is on summary and who's on deep dive, etc. from week to week. I have jumped the order because I have a special bone to pick with transporters. So we'll be getting to that after the deep dive. But this episode is all about the transporter. So, cold open. Hoshi and Trip are filming like an ancient temple complex. He's got his futuristic digital snap camera, so that's cool. The thing that's clearly inferior to the phones that we all carry these days.
Yeah, the space Polaroid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And Hoshi and them are making little quips about the engravings and carvings on the walls. None of them are actually funny, but
No, not at all.
Boy, they felt like they were funny.
Yeah,
Maybe it was funny back in the early 2000s.
But Hoshi, T'Pol notes that Archer tells them there's a storm coming and they got to make sure they're out of there in a few minutes. And then T'Pol tells Archer, hey, there's another storm coming. And Archer screams the words "another one" as loud as he can because Scott Bakula cannot act. It's like, Captain, there's another storm heading. Another one? Jesus Christ. If you look in the background, there's tornadoes in the mountains. Here's a fun fact. Do you know what they call tornadoes in like other languages?
No.
Yeah, they tend to not because they're like an American phenomenon. Did you know that?
I did know that tornadoes were not common in other places in the world. Yeah.
Yeah, they get them in Europe and like the flatter parts of like Germany, Spain.
Right, but not
France.
often enough for them to be like a phenomenon to them, right?
They're very common in Australia. I've seen like tornado chasers in Australia before.
Yeah, big flat
Another country that speaks English, though.
Yeah.
But yes, apparently, but it's not even, I don't know how the tornadoes in Australia are. They are not nearly as severe as the ones here. We get the biggest,
probably not.
strongest tornadoes, not just because it's flat, but also because of how like the northern air mixes over the plains. So that's a fun thing I learned, not too long ago. But in the background of the mountains, you can see massive tornadoes heading towards them with their excellent CGI.
I'm like, woo, CG tornadoes.
Yeah, tornadoes in mountains don't really work.
There was one here in Montana last year in a mountain. Like somebody caught a picture of it. It's super weird to look at.
You know, it's funny living in the middle of Missouri. It's tornadoes are pretty common around here, but like I guess geographically, like there's like a geographical quirk where I'm at, where they just always go like either north or south of us.
Is that geographical quirk whether or not you live near a trailer park?
It is. It is not.
Good question. That's a thing. That's a thing in Missouri. When you live in Missouri, we always say that trailer parks are the magnets for tornadoes. Like they always go through trailer parks.
There are a couple in and around Columbia, and tornadoes pretty much avoid us. So, I think it has something to do with like the woods and like the highway or something like that. It affects things.
Yeah, it doesn't like crossing highways. They prefer crosswalks. Yeah.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
They don't jaywalk.
No. Tornadoes are pretty law abiding. So, anyways, they don't think that there's time to get them off in the in the shuttle pods. So they're going to take the transporter. Hoshi's like, why don't we just hang out in these ruins? Obviously, they've survived the storms, which is a good point. But everyone's basically like, stop being a baby, Hoshi, let's go. Because no one has any actual argument against that. They just say, come on, right. Hoshi, let's go.
Right. We need to advance the story.
Then she's like, I'm really nervous about this transporter. And Trip's like, I mean, it's no big deal. And she's like, the thing takes apart all your molecules and puts them back together. How do you know they put them back in the right place? You know, I bet a lot of them look real similar. Linda Park is a phenomenal actor. Like, this whole sequence is fucking fantastic with her.
Yeah.
But Trip goes ahead and goes first because Hoshi is like, you go first. And then she gets transported up and Faith of the Heart.
Yeah, I think for that sequence, I thought it was good, but also, like the writers go back to the Hoshi is nervous about something. Well,
yeah,
and it's just like, all right, can we make her character a little bit more 3-dimensional?
I'm not sure if everyone agrees, but I'm pretty sure this whole episode is just an allegory for imposter syndrome again.
Yes, 100%. Yeah,
okay,
yeah. Yeah, we can get the bingo marker for that one.
Get that one bingoed off. I think I have that one, yeah.
I had that in my notes specifically, so I 100% agree.
Okay. I don't see that one on Mariah's sheet, so she can suck it. So Archer goes to check on Hoshi after she takes a shower and gets herself kind of situated from her rather stressful return from her away mission. I'm not sure why Archer couldn't have a phone call or an email, but instead has to awkwardly stand there while she's in a bathrobe and have this weird conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, we had to have, there had to be some suggestion of a naked woman. Or else, it wouldn't meet the horny quota for the episode.
I guess.
It's in Scott Bakula's contract.
He has to be in proximity to at least one almost tantalizingly naked woman per episode.
Yep.
Mm. Yeah, you get it.
It was just weird. It could have just been a comm call. However, she basically takes the rest of the day off because she's a little stressed out. She's worried about getting lost in the shuttle pod, and it's weird. Anyways, they go to the mess hall next day. Hoshi goes to the mess hall. Wants to sit with some people, and she's like, is anyone sitting here? And no one hears her because she's soft-spoken. And then she's like, clears her throat in a weird kind of rude way. And everyone's like, what the fuck, Hoshi? And she's like, can I sit here? And they're like, yes, go ahead. No one said you couldn't.
Fucking weirdo, go ahead.
And then they're like, how you doing? You got transported? And she's like, I don't feel good. She's like, well, dude, what do you think you're Cyrus Ramsey? And then we start this whole conversation about Cyrus Ramsey. where Hoshi's like, who's Cyrus Ramsey? And even I'm like, use some fucking context clues. Aren't you a linguist? Like, obviously a dude who had trouble with a transporter.
Yeah.
By the way, I don't know if you guys, I don't know why, but this was just blatantly weird to me. We got the return of the really awkward camera work that we saw from like A Night in Sickbay. Like, this whole scene was so weirdly portrayed.
It's funny, too, because I also mentioned just how fucking dramatic the music was in this episode. I'm wondering if it was the same director or crew.
Ooh, I wonder.
Yeah, I think part of that was to give the audience a feel for something being off.
Yeah.
Which we, of course, find out later why, but I think that was intentional.
So they have a conversation, and then Trip and Travis are kind of talking about, because Travis was talking before Hoshi showed up about how like he wishes he got to see the planet. And then Trip actually does Travis a little favor by being like, actually, can I take Travis with me? And the captain's like, sure, because Hoshi doesn't want to go back down to the planet. And Travis is like, Trip's like, don't say I never did anything for you, which is, I was like, oh, that was a nice little moment. That was cool. But then they all take off because they got shit to do, and Hoshi's eating there, feeling like no one says goodbye. That's what bothers Hoshi there.
I just looked it up. It is the exact same director, David Straighten.
Man, what does it say about us?
We've analyzed this show for way too long, and it's only 3 seasons in, or 2 seasons too.
We're already able to identify directors' like fingerprints all over shit.
Yeah, really.
Hoshi goes to sick bay, and I don't know. There's just this kind of feeling that everyone's pretending that Hoshi's invisible, and I was like, "Is this one of Travis's world famous pranks?"
Yeah, yeah. I think that was, and once again, this is going back to what is amiss with this whole basically episode. We get that's kind of a consistent from them ignoring her when she's trying to sit down, whatever.
When she's right there,
yeah.
She's obviously pretty distraught about this, and Phlox is like, fucking, like, get over it. In the very, like, this is why these things should have, like, real therapists on them. She points out to him
or a counselor.
Yeah, anything. She points out to him that, like, because he's like, your molecules look like they're all in the right place, and she's like, what about this? And she points to, like, I guess a mole or something she had, or a subcutaneous pigmentation, so like a freckle or something.
Mm-hmm.
And she's like, it used to be lower. And then Phlox says, well, it's beautiful the way it is. Like, all right, Phlox, Jesus Christ, you don't have to hit on her. What the fuck?
Yeah, Phlox got game. He's got multiple wives, man. He can't reel it in. It's just always out there.
I guess not. Jesus Christ, man. He tells her to get a good night's sleep.
He had to learn something in all those degrees that he's accomplished.
Mm-hmm. Why Cutler can't get enough of them. She wakes up several hours later, and is like late for her shift by like over 3 hours. And
which, by the way, classic dream sequence thing.
Yes, but also it wasn't a dream sequence. Well, in the context of what we were doing for the episode, right? Like, I thought she was going to wake up again, but she didn't.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, yeah, I mean, so obviously we find out later what happened, but this is all, it's basically like one long extended dream sequence.
Right. She's trying to, there's a miscommunication with some kind of species, and she's trying to do her job, but she's sucking at it. And, she's like, they're like, okay, Hoshi, obviously you need to go back to bed. So they send her away, and they're like, take the comm, random dude.
Yeah.
Random dude comes up again later.
Kerman Baird.
Yeah, Baird, that's right. We cut to Act 2. Act 2, so this was not a dream then? Why is the music so goddamn dramatic? That is my note there.
Mm-hmm.
Oh shit, she's turning into a vampire because she's looking in the mirror and suddenly she can't, like, see her reflection.
And she's naked. Don't forget.
Of course, there's a horny camera pan into the shower is my next note.
Gotta have a naked lady.
Yeah, her hands start vanishing, so obviously she's going to need to play some Chuck Berry guitar at a prom in order to save herself from vanishing.
Oh, that's true.
This is a good joke. Fuck you people. She goes and sees T'Pol in the mess hall, and she's like, sorry, and like, I'm gonna go fix whatever. And T'Pol's like, no, we got it all figured out. And she's like, how did you get that figured out? And it was like, oh yeah, crewman random dude did your job for you. He just pushed the work button. And
Yeah.
it's very much like crewman random dude sucks ass. This makes no sense. He's a grade A fuck up. Like, it's like,
Well, clearly the Hoshi is the grade A fuck up in this scenario.
yeah. So Hoshi is getting more and more distraught as she's like wandering through the halls, and like people are just ignoring her. Fucking Allison, that bitch, just won't even acknowledge her.
She starts hearing voices.
Yeah, she starts hearing voices, and this is where you start figuring out that this is, well, figuring out. I mean, it's pretty obvious from the musical swells, but this is where you start realizing like quite what the issue is, because you start hearing like frantic chatter from Trip and Reed about transporter stuff just kind of happening around her, and she's like, what the fuck? And we're gonna go talk to Phlox again, because that's
Productive.
That's been productive so far. Phlox is like, the transporter is perfectly safe. I don't know what your issue is. But he also is like, but I'm not fucking using it. Like, fuck you.
Yeah, he basically says she has some type of psychosis going on, and otherwise she's fine.
Some kind of minor insanity, but she'll be fine.
Just minor insanity.
Yeah. She goes down to the gym, I guess, to kind of work some of the frustration out, and Trip's just having a good time in a gyroscopic chair. Like,
that thing looks very fun.
I've been in one in wait, hold your horses. Space
camp.
Yeah.
Oh gosh.
They are actually quite fun.
Yeah, he also says the laws of physics don't apply to it. Well, actually, that they are very. It's the exact opposite of that for that thing.
That's what makes it fun, is the physics.
Yes.
It was very silly. Hoshi's using the Starfleet Bowflex though. Pretty much every single person she asks for advice is like, take some sleeping drugs, you'll be fine. My note here is, yo, take some sleeping drugs. Quote everybody.
Yep.
Then she starts fading out again, and my note here is more like ghost she instead of Hoshi. She can't like she can't like push buttons anymore, so she can't get out of the gym, and she can't like.
I have a question about this.
Uh-oh.
So I think your question is going to align with my thought that I was going to say. So go ahead.
I have one as well.
If her hands pass through the walls, why don't her feet pass
exactly.
through the floor?
We all have the same question.
This is my thing with any type of phasing in any show ever.
What's funny?
It's like,
there was a show, I don't remember what it was called. It was like Battle Angels 3535 or something like that. 2525. Anyways, there was a show. It was like in the future. Everyone lived underground in this like facility, because if you went above ground, the hunter drones would kill you. And they had like a phasing device that let them phase through walls. And they specifically are like, why don't my feet fall through the floor? And the scientist was like, it took us months to lick that problem, and we discovered that there's a unique kind of molecule on the bottom of your feet that we can just kind of hone it. Which was one of those things where it's like, good on them for actually calling out this TV trope that's just used so goddamn much. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, this is clearly not a one-time thing for Star Trek. Phasing happens, and it seems like almost every Star Trek series.
Yeah, I'm still thinking it's like a Travis prank at this point. And the no one can see me is like the most 2000s of plots. Like, it feels like every show had a plot like that at some point. I don't know why I have secondary phase coils. Oh, secondary phase coils. Yeah, then we get some more flashes to her hearing like Trip and Reed shouting about the transporter. Oh yeah, good thing her feet stay on the deck. Hoshi guilt trips the shit out of everybody because they can't see her. Oh yeah, so they're doing like a deck, because they don't know where Hoshi went, right? Hoshi has phased out of reality at this point, but she's still kind of there. But I guess like Phlox has toggled his super tricorder to like detect her or whatever. So him and Trip are looking around, and they find like some goo that has like some cellular residue of hers. So
and Arch is like, well, her parents are going to want that goo.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, just smear up some of Hoshi for the funeral.
Yeah, not all of it, mind you. They just take a sample.
Just take a little bit. While they're crawling around the ducts, like, to try to get the Hoshi off the deck, there's like random aliens just like doing shit, and Hoshi's
What
like,
was the fucking point of the aliens in this?
I do not know.
There is 0
They were
point,
like-
just besides to add some type of like red herring suspense.
Yeah, that was entirely the purpose. It has to be.
I almost feel like there was a rewrite and the red herring shit got added at the last minute. Because
So you're right, because it's very slapdash. It's like, oh, there's some aliens. Brr.
right, but I'm
What?
wondering. No. I mean, I bet the aliens were in the original script, and that was the actual plot. And then someone decided to cut into scenes where, like, she hears Trip and Reed talking, and then it's the last part where she pops out and stuff. As like,
It would have been.
look, it was all a dream. Meh.
Yeah, like I thought they were working towards something like in that line. Like maybe these beings existed between multiple dimensions or something, and that's why they
Right.
were like phased out or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Like it was working towards something potentially cool, but we'll get to that at the end.
So again, I ask, she can walk right through a door, but she stays on the floor. Someone's like, we've located her father, which is a really weird way to say that. Like, are we assassins? What does that mean? How about we've reached or we got a hold of? Hoshi's dad is like, stop yanking my chain here, motherfucker, because Archer can't have a goddamn conversation to save his fucking life. But to be fair, neither can Hoshi's dad.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It was weird.
He's like, "What are you trying to say here?" I'm like, "Dude, it's obvious what he's trying to say
Right.
here."
Right. Hoshi figures out that she can interrupt plasma conduit flow in order to converse with Morse code at Archer in his room.
Speaking of worn out television tropes, the good old Morse code.
Well, Archer was an Eagle Scout, so
Fair.
this is the point where I'm like, is this fucking real or not? Because the Morse code thing was fucking killing me. So there's just aliens around. And then,
Well, and the Morse code thing too. They're like, "Oh, look, it's SOS," and then they just like, it's probably nothing. Never mind.
Yeah.
right?
They're like, she
Meanwhile-
changed it up. They're like, "Oh, it must have been random." Oh well.
Meanwhile, like anytime there's like a non-random sequence that hits the antennas at SETI, everybody loses their goddamn minds.
Right? Yeah.
Mhm.
And then it turns out that she was just kind of midstream, and Reed and Trip figure out the transporter system and get her back on the pad, and everything's fine. It was all a dream. And then someone says, like, we need to start compressing the transporter beam. That's a terror. That's not a good idea, because I don't think lossless compression is a thing that can happen with transporter beams, and you don't want to
No, it's
lose
fine.
shit. No, it's
It's fine.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Yeah.
They just take out the parts that don't really matter. It's fine.
Look, you've got a piece of skin here and a piece of skin there. We'll just tell the computer it's one piece of skin copied to 2 locations. That's saves data. It's like, now
Sorry.
I've got an ass on my face. They're both sphincters.
Fuckface.
And that's the end of the episode. So here's the thing. Okay, here's the fucking thing about this episode. Thinking about it now, I suspect that she's just caught in the transporter, and that she woke up from this terrible dream was a later edit to the script, and that the original idea was, because of a weird transporter accident, she was semi-phased out of reality, and then she happened to save the ship from these aliens who brought their own transporter pad thingy, and then like she was just going to hop on that and basically be phased back into their reality, having saved the ship.
Which would have been a much more interesting story.
Yes,
Well, it would
that
have been
would've
very
cool.
typical. It would have been very typical Star Trek. Like, that's a standard Star Trek episode that I'm
Which
like,
is
all right, that's
fine.
fine. That's fine. But because they made it where it was like, well, it was all a dream, the entire
The worst
episode
story
was just
resolution in
terrible.
storytelling.
because that meant that every single other thread was useless.
Yes. It was all a dream is the worst story resolution in any type of media. Just fucking stop it.
Yeah, and now you just made Hoshi look super paranoid for no reason.
Right.
Yeah,
Hate it.
this took me from like a 4 down to a 2. Did not like.
I
I mean, it would have been a 3 for me.
I was at a 3.
I think otherwise.
Yeah.
But two is where I'm at for this for sure.
Man, I'm trying to decide if I want to go down to a 1. It just was not good.
It wasn't good, but it wasn't just like actively bad outside of the ending.
I don't know. We all gave Marauders a 1 and Night in Sickbay for me. This
Marauders
felt pretty
was
Night in
actively
Sickbay.
bad.
I think that the ending literally ruined the story because it
did.
It took anything the story was doing and made it actively bad. So I think I'm going to give it a 1.
It's not bad enough for me to give it a 1, but I'm almost sticking 2.
Rob, you still a 2?
Yeah, I'm still 2.
Well, you're a 10 in my heart.
Oh.
Yeah, I was not a fan. And the other problem too is like as the amount of time it took me to summarize this episode might indicate, not a lot happened because it was a lot of like extended scenes of like dramatic music and Hoshi just wandering.
That's how I felt about Singularity. It was the same thing, but with T'Pol. Like, these 2 episodes just felt like they had a 15-minute idea and then drug it out to 40 minutes.
You know, it didn't even occur to me that these were back-to-back episodes, and that was a terrible idea.
Yeah. Yep, it's a filler episode. It's like they couldn't figure out a way to make what you described, the original baby plotline, more interesting. So they're like, it was a dream.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm not sure, like, I don't know. I think that they finished it and then we're like, well, this is pretty standard. We got to do something. We need a better twist. We got a twist.
That's not a good twist ever.
No, it's a terrible twist.
It's a lazy twist.
Bad. All right. Anyone got anything else to say about this bullshit before we move on?
No. Let's just move on past this garbage.
All right. We'll be back after this break.
Time for Stanford's rant about rantingness, Star Trek rants.
Well, welcome back. So, today on my deep dive, I'm going to get a little technical. And we're going to have a conversation about transporters. Now, as a full disclosure and to a complete transparency, I am not a proponent of transportation even inside the universe, because I'm pretty sure they kill you. Now, I have done extensive research. Oh, okay. I have done extensive research on the transporters, and I am delighted to inform you that I may have been slightly incorrect in that analysis. But also, I'm not. So, we're going to get into it. Now, before I begin, does anyone know, I assume we've talked about before, but like, why do the transporters exist in Star Trek? Not like in the lore, but why do they exist in the fiction?
To move luggage.
Deus Ex.
Why did the original show use transporters? Why were they invented as a show concept? Ooh, do y'all not know this?
They didn't build doors in the sets.
Ooh, so no. It is because they felt that filming an extended shuttlecraft sequence every time they wanted to land would be too expensive.
Okay.
I didn't know you didn't know that. Yeah. Yeah, that's why the transporters got invented, because Gene Roddenberry and his crew decided that the most cost-effective way to
I mean, that's a very original, serious thing, though. Cost-effective.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. So they don't need a shuttlecraft set. They don't need the special effects. All they need is the transporters. Now, here's another question then, I guess. Do you know how they did the original transporter effect?
I do.
Oh, shit.
Was it like... did they, like, superimpose, like, a glass with, like, glitter in it?
Yes.
Or something like that?
Yes, exactly right. Apparently Mariah knew that.
Yeah.
So yes, what they did is they filmed a glass with like large glitter in it, with like a pretty strong light on it, against, I guess, whatever they were able to like cut out. I don't know how their film worked, because it's the 60s, right? They can't just blue screen shit, right?
Right.
Sorry. 1 second, my dryer just finished. Okay. LG was informing me that my laundry was done. The only thing in the house that is excited when the laundry finishes. So I don't know the actual like technical editing parts of that, but as I understand, what they did was they filmed a stationary glass filled with glitter that they just stirred real quick, and then used that footage over top of the people in order to make the transporter thing. Now, in the universe, do either of you know how transporters work?
I mean,
magic.
in a general concept, sure.
Okay, yeah. In general, you disappear from here, you go there.
yeah, exactly.
They rip apart your molecules. We talked about it in this episode.
So when we talk about transporters, there are 3 steps to the process. Okay, or excuse me, 1, 2, 3, 4. Excuse me, 4 steps to the process. Step 1 is targeting. You got to find what you're trying to get. That's the one I forgot. Okay. Step 2 is break that thing down. Step 3 is send it somewhere. And step 4 is rematerialization. Okay, so basically build the thing back again. All right. Now, the problem I had before I really studied this was in step 3 and 4. So we will get to that in a moment. But step 1, targeting. That is pretty standard, like Star Trek wishy-washy sensory stuff. Like there's some sensors that the computer has access to, and you target stuff with them. That's never really clearly defined. The limitations of it are fairly like consistently used. Well, yes, absolutely. But fairly consistently used in a way that like, oh, that's a good element for the plot. Like, oh, we had to beam into, like, we can't beam out of if you're in too deep of a cave, or, oh, there's some kind of crazy
shields up,
energy storms, things like that. Okay. Fairly consistently through all of the shows, you cannot beam through shields, including your own shields. Although in First Contact, that definitely happens, where they beam Worf out of the Defiant and their shields are 100% up because we see the Borg shooting at them.
No, it's fine. They just do that thing that like they did with propellers and planes and
the phasing thing.
Yeah.
So what's interesting about that is there is an episode of, I believe it is TOS, where like the transporter chief does that, and it's like a big deal. Because like he like figured out how to do it, but it was like something you could only do very like randomly. It was like a stroke of genius he had that you can't even tell a computer how to do it. It was so hard to do.
Convenient.
Yeah, well, sure, you know. So that's how targeting works. Now breaking it down. Here's a fun thing. So the transporter hits you with a beam of power, okay? And this beam of power, based on your targeting lock, will start breaking your atoms down. Now, that sounds painful.
Yeah, it does.
Like, real painful. And also, what's to prevent you from moving? Well, based on what timeline you're in, most of the transporter beams actually paralyze you. Like, either through some kind of force field or whatever. Apparently, it doesn't hurt. But, like, only because no one's screaming when they rematerialize do we know that, right? But yes, as obviously a convenience of filming these things, especially back in the 60s, but also in the late 80s and through some of the 90s, in order to have an actor disappear and then reappear, it is best if they are standing still, because it's just the easiest way to edit that like effect. So usually, especially in TOS, when the transporter effect started, it was actually still frame at that point on the actor. Like that
makes sense.
Their hair's not even moving, their clothing is not moving anymore. It's just still frame. And the kind of in-universe like explanation for that was that the beam that was breaking them down was actually like holding them in place while it was doing that.
You can't be moving around while your atoms are getting shattered into a million pieces.
Yeah, exactly. Now, that obviously changed as the show went on. For example, in the Kelvin universe, people are moving all over the goddamn place while they're getting transported.
True.
The Admiral's daughter in the second movie was like screeching and running down a corridor when she got beamed off. But also, there have been episodes where people have been beamed off of moving ships. They get beamed off moving ships kind of a lot, actually. Or, people are there's kind of some wishy-washiness in the targeting, too, because there's always this thing where, like, every once in a while, someone will grab someone while they're being transported, and they'll go, too.
Yeah.
There's always kind of an interesting question.
We got a fly situation going on in those.
Okay. So, and here's where I was not aware of how the transporter theoretically worked. Okay, this is the first part. Once you are broken down, the next step is transmission. How does that work? Okay?
Quantum waves.
You're not entirely wrong, but you're not Star Trek-y enough.
You mean pseudoscience bullshitty enough?
Well,
reversed polarity
like
quantum waves.
Star Trek flavored pseudoscience. Because remember, transporters can go through almost anything, right? Like it takes weird energies and shit to block a transporter. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
It's because the transporter beam goes through subspace.
Oh, that's the magical fix right there. Is subspace.
Exactly. That's how it goes through solid rocks and shit. You'll hear the term annular confinement beam. It is not angular confinement beam. It is annular. ANNULAR. I actually meant to look up in the dictionary whether or not that was actually a word. My hunch is that...
Is that where those time buttholes come from?
Yeah, it's the annular. That's the analar.
Apparently it means ring-shaped.
Annular is a real word.
It is.
Time buttholes, I told you.
Crazy. Okay. I just assumed someone misspelled angular. But basically an annular confinement beam is like a beam of energy that is in real space that can like keep the subspace beam on track and they meet up where they're supposed to go. The annular confinement beam is the actual thing that like determines how far your range can go on the transporter. Because without it, you lose what is called cohesion, where basically you go into subspace and then your particles are scattered across subspace.
Oh my God, Stanford.
That's bad, man.
Transporters are Minecraft nether portals.
So anyways, so what I didn't understand was I was under the impression, I was under this impression because I thought I had heard it said somewhere that what a transporter did was read your stuff and then build you out of the molecules at the spot, right? Like, but then I was always like, well, how do they beam shit into space? That doesn't fucking make sense. Turns out it breaks you down into subatomic particles, but then sends those actual subatomic particles through subspace to the target.
So, but still, like, the question is, does your consciousness transfer in those subatomic particles?
Since we are in a pseudoscience-y kind of discussion, I will be gracious enough to say that maybe that makes sense. Okay? If you're sending my actual particles to the target, then sure, my consciousness can go too. Okay? Fine. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that as a concept. I know it's all nonsense in terms of actual science, but like, at least it's consistent nonsense, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then of course, step 4, we rebuild you back up. Basically what happens is, as long as all of the particles get to the right spot, it just kind of happens. They don't really explain how that happens remotely. It's just one of those things where it's like, it just does. So don't worry about it. And that's fine. Like I'm okay to not worry about that.
How do the buffers work then?
Okay. So that's the question. So in between step 2, break it down. Step 3, send it. There is a transporter buffer. Okay. What the buffer does in theory is hold on to that stream of subatomic particles that you're going to send into subspace. It just holds it. Think of it like a basket that you're holding your groceries in until you get them into the bags to go home with. Okay? So, and again, in theory, I can see how that logically works. The buffer is just a repository of, space available for these subatomic particles.
It's the hopper for the particle cannon.
Sure. And this actually works if you never think that the computer has to make any calculations on that matter. Okay? Theoretically, if you're doing it right, you don't ever actually have to, compute anything. You just have to know where the edges are, like a three-dimensional version of Photoshop Select Tool, beam all of that shit into subatomicness, put it in the buffer, and then send it somewhere. So actually, the computer doesn't even have to be involved on the actual data, right? Does that make sense?
No.
Sure.
No. There has to be some sort of packetizing of this, or nothing's going to get back together correctly.
Well, so in theory, the packetizing is happening inside the stream itself. It is a self-contained... It's, I hate to use this because fucking NFT bros ruined everything, but it is effectively a smart contract on a blockchain. It is a self-contained program.
I don't like this.
Rob's gone unconscious from all the eye rolling he's done.
Rob's brain broke.
So it's like we push the buttons, we target the thing, send some people via the transporter.
Okay. I gotta ask though, what the fuck is with the 3 sliders?
Okay. These fucking 3 sliders. Oh man. The 3 sliders are fucking funny because they existed on the original set because they looked cool. That was the only reason, right? But of course, because it's Star Trek, we have to have a reason. And the 3 sliders were kept on in later iterations of the show and in the movies as an homage. This is just what transporters do. But some people have tried to retcon some reasons for them. One of them was one is the paralyzing beam, and one of them is this, and one of them is this. And it doesn't really matter. My question is, because this is not answered, in the horrifyingly exact process that is breaking down the trillions of atoms in a person and rebuilding them later, how are we trusting some random dude's fingers to slide those sliders up at the same rate consistently every time? There's not even
there's a major for it in Starfleet.
It's the sliders are stupid. It's a stupid concept because I'm not even sure. And there's inconsistencies on what the sliders actually do because sometimes it's they slide them up and then slide them back down and then the guy shows up. But other times it's they slide them up and then we cut away. We're done. We're done with those sliders. So there's not a lot of... All I can really tell what the sliders do is they make the noise. That's what they do.
They need to make it so it look like the actors are actually doing something.
Yeah, exactly.
One makes the noise, one makes the sparkle effect, and then the middle one actually does the transporting.
There you go.
Obviously a volume button.
So that's what's going on with these 3 sliders.
You did not answer my question at all, but thank you.
Yeah, I answered it to the best of my ability. So if we assume that what the transporter is doing, based on the technology bullshit that we have been given in various shows and episodes and technical manuals and whatnot, is it picks a target, it uses math and physics and energy to break it down into a subatomic particle stream, puts it in a jar, which is the buffer, and then spits that out somewhere, and the stream itself knows how to build itself back up, so it does. We're good to go. Your consciousness is intact. I'm actually okay with that kind of transporter concept. I would use it.
I am not. This is so much worse than the other way around.
It murders you.
Because, think about it. Okay, if they're relying on the stream to be able to tell itself how to put you back together, that means there is no chance at error handling. If there is ever a mistake made, they can't fix it.
That's how you get the Riker twin.
We're not at the Riker twin yet. I haven't even begun to get to the fucking Riker twin yet. So if that's how it worked, and it was just a physical phenomenon that they were tapping into, I agree, Rob, that you say there's no error handling, but like I don't necessarily agree that there needs to be. It's just a physical law. It's just going to happen. Fine, but there are error handlers built in, and that's inside the buffer because that's not exactly how it works. The buffer is doing some sort of analysis and computation. And we know that for a few reasons across all of the episodes, across all of the series. And it started with, in TOS, there was an episode called Private Little War or something like that. The new toys, some sort of thing. Basically, at the beginning of the show, the away team's down the planet and it's like Kirk and McCoy and somebody else are down the planet. Spock's up top, and they get ambushed by Klingons. And the Klingons are like, "Tell your ship to beam us all back up, but don't tell them anything's up." And Kirk's like, "Fine." And he sends this like code phrase to Spock, and Spock's like, "All right." So he beams them all up, but then just materializes Kirk and McCoy and them first, pulls them out, and then materializes the Klingons. Now, again, if the buffer worked the way I had already described, that would be fine. We just pulled the part of the stream that we're ready for. But what they did do was they did not materialize the phasers that were in the hands of the Klingons. Or the disruptors, I guess, they're Klingons. Which means that the transporter was smart enough to go, okay, I know that I've got this Klingon here, but this part of the Klingon is a weapon, and I'm not going to have that show up. Right. Not only that, we also get explanations of things like biofilters.
Right.
There's occasionally times where people are like beamed in clothing and stuff. That kind of happened in First Contact. Like
they can vaccinate you with them.
Sure.
Beam it right into your blood.
So obviously the buffer is doing some analysis. Okay. We get this more clearly in Picard in the third season, which has perhaps the dumbest transporter-related plot device I've ever fucking seen.
There's so much dumb stuff in that show that I've filtered it out of my head and I can't remember.
Oh, stand the fuck by, because I'm going to tell you. So, I just explained how the transporter theoretically works, right? Well, Picard went ahead and said, well, we've got to have a way for the Borg to infect everyone with genes, which are like genetic sequences. And they thought, I know what we'll do. We'll call something a standard pattern.
Right.
Where the computer...
I remember now.
Breaks you down. So fucking stupid. Breaks you down. Says, oh, you're a human. Well... 99.9% of human genetic code is the same across all members of the species. So I'll just use my standard pattern for that. And I'll just make the differences and then beam you onto the thing. Never mind, does that not work even in any way? It's also just like terrifying because that means like there's not allowed to be any...
There's no continuity at that point. It's just
right.
It's just you're using energy to build a person at that point.
Yes, a person that happens to look like you.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Transporter. I'll go back to the transporter is murder you every time.
Yeah. And theoretically, they're like it saves memory if the computer doesn't have to make as many calculations on your genes. Motherfucker, the computer's making calculations theoretically on the subatomic particles making up your fucking pulse. Like. It's not going to save it any time if you're like, oh my God, what a dumb fucking odd. But it was the reason we had to do it that way was so that the olds could save the day. That was the whole
dumbest
point.
plot line.
It was so bad.
That show.
So yes. So, but now let's get to the Riker clone. So if the transporter is doing what they theoretically say it does, how did the Riker clone happen? Do you all remember what happened with the Riker clone?
No.
It was something about how they were beaming him out and some interference from the station he was on caused like one to be transported to the ship and one to remain on the station, right?
Yes. So what happened was they beamed him out. So they broke him down. Step 1, break him down. Step 2, no. Step 1, target him. They locked him on target. Step 2, break him down. Step 3, send him back up to the Enterprise. Okay. There was a storm of some kind of energy going on that was nonsense, and that was interfering with the reception of the subatomic stream of particles. In order to compensate, the Enterprise locked on a secondary annular confinement beam. Okay, so 2 confinement beams are going on in the same stream now.
Okay.
So that magically cloned all his particles, I guess?
Well, no, because a confinement beam, as we stated, doesn't make subatomic particles. It just tells them where to go.
Uh-huh.
So hold on. We're not done.
Okay.
So the secondary beam was able to grab a hold of the pattern and beam him up. And according to Geordi, well, it turns out he didn't really need to do that because the interference from the storm was the same. I'm trying to remember the exact terminology, but it was like the same subspace frequency as the beam itself. So it turns out it was fine. But because of the secondary annular beam, the storm reflected the beam back as well as going up. It like kind of split it into 2. And so the one materialized up in the Enterprise and the other one materialized down on the planet.
Like, why the fuck did his like bones not just go back to the planet and just be like a meat sack on the pad?
Well, okay. So every single thing about you is composed of a billion fucking particles, right? So I can see you being effectively intact in terms of like whatever with 50% of all of your particles, but you're gonna weigh half as much.
Okay.
Like,
and die instantly.
Oh, instantaneously. Yeah. There's no question about that.
You're just gonna like explode into a pink mist, and everyone's gonna be like, "What happens?"
I think you'll just kind of fade away like the snap in Endgame. Yeah, there is no explanation given for how Riker's subatomic stream had enough stuff for 2 Rikers. So all that does is prove at some level what is happening is that it's not the stream of particles itself. There is some sort of energy matter conversion going on, which means that effectively the 2 Riker situation proves that a transporter is not just taking you from point A and putting you at point B.
Right.
There is some kind of intermediate process, which means that you are not the same fucking person anymore.
Right.
You're dead.
I come back to the transporter as murder you. Yes.
You're
every time.
Dead.
It's the one thing that Dr. What's-Her-Fuck in season 2 of Next Generation had right.
Yes. But you know what's funny about that? I can't find a single episode, line of dialogue, anything mentioning any kind of consent when it comes to transporting.
That would raise too many questions.
It's in your enlistment contract for Starfleet.
But they beam people off of shit who they've never even seen before all the time.
Yeah, I mean, you got crazy powerful technology like this. Of course, it's going to be weaponized.
It's not a weapon though to them, right? My point is it's like, oh no, that ship is falling apart. Beam the survivors off. They do that all the time.
Well, I mean, that's like, to a certain degree, I guess, depending on how you identify your bloodline, right? I mean, like, people have kids. It's not you living on, but your lizard brain maybe considers it so, right?
If there is an afterlife, it must be fucking crowded with Starfleet personnel.
Like multiple versions
like
of
73
Starfleet
different
personnel.
fucking Picards up there having conversations. Yeah. So
St. Peter's at the gate. He's just going, "What? You again?"
I thought when I was reading, I was like, subatomic stream. Oh shit, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe this isn't just a murder kill machine. or a murder clone device. That's what
It's
called.
confirmed.
Murder
Transporter
clone
chiefs or mass murderers.
Murder clone device. There's no other way that would work.
Nope.
There's no way, and I'm sorry, there is literally no way you can have the Riker. The Riker problem is really the smoking gun in all of this. If your transporter can, through an accident like that, make two of a person, it's a murder kill device. It can't not be.
Correct. I 100% agree.
Anyways, that's how transporters work, and I'm not getting fucking in one.
Never. Fuck that shit.
And actually, it's what now Rob's okay with it.
I really hate driving.
Rob's like, I'd rather be dead.
The only type of transporting I would ever be cool with is some type of wormhole situation where we're just folding space and I'm walking through the hole. That's it.
Yeah. Stargate transporting. That's all I do.
Exactly.
Although it would be cool if consent was a thing, you could wear a special bracelet or something,
like a life, like those
a medical
DNRs.
Bracelet. Yeah, exactly. And it would basically it's got a marker in it, and if the transporter detected that marker, it would just automatically I'm not able to transport this person.
DNTs.
DNTs, do not transport. Yeah. Oh my God. Yeah. Fantastic. Where's your ethics now, Starfleet?
I have a new merch idea.
Do not transport bracelets.
We can get that's a good idea. Do not
that's
transport.
Actually a pretty good idea. I like that.
That's actually we gotta get like a no symbol, with the cross and the circle, and then some kind of symbol that means transport.
Just some glitter.
No, it's the 3 volume control thing.
There you go. Perfect.
All right, and on that note, we will take another break, and we will be right back.
Welcome back, everybody. So for my Potpourri section today, I wanted to talk a little bit about another sci-fi show I've been enjoying recently that is tangentially related to our little Star Trek Enterprise. I want to talk about For All Mankind. So For All Mankind, for those who don't know, it is an Apple TV show, which is probably why you two don't know that, because I don't think either of you have it.
Nope.
But it is kind of it's an alternate timeline premise. I would say very light alternate timeline. It's not like, Man in the High Castle where the Nazis win type situation. What it is in 1969, a Soviet cosmonaut is the first human to land on the moon instead of, an American.
What's his name?
Alexei Leonov.
Does he also fuck up the poem?
I think in the show they say it's a step for all, the Marxist and Leninist way of life or something like that.
Oh, what a comrade!
So it's basically the show follows not only the NASA program and kind of their response to that, and how that kind of changes the relationship between the U.S. space program and the Soviet space program. But it follows closely the astronauts themselves. It has a lot of interpersonal drama, and not only follows kind of how that space program might have evolved differently in that case. There's more of kind of an impetus to push the program forward instead of kind of landing on the moon and kind of being satisfied with it. So there's also a situation where they find water on the moon. So that obviously opens up whole possibilities of, being sort of like a way station into other areas. But there's a lot of following of there's a early introduction of women into the space program, because all of a sudden the Soviets have the first woman into space too.
When was this?
So it starts in 1969. There's
of
4. Go ahead.
So actually, the second person in space was a woman.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, before Alan Shepard managed to get up, the second Russian in space was a woman. She was like a huge badass too.
Yeah. But so that like prompts the Americans to have like this kind of a whole group of women who go through the astronaut with the ASCANs, the astronaut candidate school. So it follows them, and it's got 4 total seasons. I'm about a season and a half into it, but it has some dramatic emotional moments. It kind of follows not only the astronauts themselves, but their significant others that are kind of left on Earth while these astronauts are in space doing whatever it happens to be. It touches on in this time period homosexuals kind of hiding their identities to try to fit in and accomplish the things they want to accomplish. So that it's very interesting. The acting's great. The kind of the lead. It's a lot of different cast members, but the lead is Joel Kinnaman. I'm not sure if you're familiar with him.
If you give me a role or something.
So most recently, probably the bigger things he's been in is RoboCop and Suicide Squad, as far as movies go.
Ooh, which character in Suicide Squad?
Rick Flag.
Which one was Rick Flag?
So he was the kind of the goody two shoes, American military guy who went with the survivors of the initial Suicide Squad. He was also
he's the one that Peacemaker killed.
Yes, that sounds right. Yes, yeah.
Yeah, okay. All right.
But he's been in other TV series too, like Altered Carbon, House of Cards.
That's right. He's the Altered Carbon guy.
Yep.
That's a good show.
It is a good show. Although he left after the first season and was replaced by the guy who was Falcon from the Marvel series, which is just a weird transition.
That must have been the second.
Yeah, second season.
After the second season, because then he got rid. I never saw the third season of Altered Carbon, so that must have happened in the third season.
Maybe it was. Yeah.
Shit, though, I like the guy who's playing Falcon and.
Yeah, he's good too. Yeah, it's just a weird, obviously hard cut to a completely different looking person.
Very different person.
Yeah, Swedish American to but
to
there's other people.
Yeah.
There's other people in it like Chantel Van Santen, who I wasn't super familiar with her name, but I've seen her in other stuff. Let's see what she's been in. She's been in The Boys. Let's see, Shooter.
You got to give me characters.
She was Becca Butcher in The Boys.
Okay.
So she's very good in it. There's a lot of lesser known people in it as well, but tremendously well acted. Highly recommend if you do have access to Apple TV. It is an Apple TV exclusive.
Ew.
That's like the one streaming service I have never subscribed to.
That and Hulu for me.
I have an iPhone, so I have it as part of a
Ew, what? Package. Why?
I've always had an iPhone.
Oh, God, knock it off.
Much like the majority of Americans.
I don't think that's true.
It is true.
The majority of Gen Z.
You shut your goddamn mouth, Chris.
The majority of the world runs an Android for sure, but America is a majority of iPhones.
I actually don't have any issue with iPhones. I just don't care for them.
Yeah, well, that's fine. That's fine. It's one of those things. You get everything set up on it, and you're like, well, I guess I'll get the new one.
Yeah.
But as far as the show goes, highly recommend. I'm enjoying it immensely. It's like I said, it's in the middle of its 4th season right now. So
interesting
to do.
So I guess that is alternate history, although it also sounds kind of like historical fiction. I don't know which.
Yeah, I'd say that's pretty accurate. Like I said, it's light alt history. There's a few things that change. It's actually kind of one of the funny things is Linda Park's character is a newscaster. And there's kind of these in between clips they do between the seasons where it's a newscaster reading off various events that happened in the time period, whatever it is.
Right.
Like Kennedy doesn't get assassinated.
Why?
It don't really go into it. It just he doesn't get assassinated. But just Reagan beats him in an election.
Gross.
The one Beetle guy doesn't get assassinated.
John Lennon.
Yeah.
Also,
so,
he
like,
goes on to hit a bunch more women, or
I think it was mostly his anti-war, messages that are focused on there, not so much the part you highlighted.
What, did Catcher in the Rye not get printed? Like, why didn't he get assassinated?
So yeah, it's like not tremendous things that are like different, at least is so far insofar as I've gone. Obviously that may change later on in the show. Like I said, I haven't gotten that far yet, but I thought it was interesting. They did it so like they built the Sea Dragon rocket. I don't know if you're familiar with that concept.
Let's pretend I'm not.
So basically, the Sea Dragon was supposed to be a rocket that was launched from the sea. It was basically like a cargo rocket that was meant to deliver, various construction materials into space and maybe the moon or wherever. But obviously, that's not a thing that was ever invested in the real world. But in this alternate history, there's more base construction on the moon, and so like there's this need to put more shit up there, so that actually happens. So they take these things that maybe didn't happen but were designed for or planned and make those kind of a reality in the show.
Why is launching from the sea better?
That's a good question. I don't know.
Okay.
I wonder if they can move the launch platform so you can avoid weather, maybe?
Well, the only thing I can think of is like, so do y'all know why, we launch from Florida?
Because you get more speed.
Right.
The planets spin.
Right. So I guess like Russia nor America own any like equatorial land that is good for manufacture and production and launching of rockets.
Right.
So I guess if you could manufacture it at home and then just ship it to the equator and fire it off, that would be pretty easy.
Right. So to read you the old wiki for the Sea Dragon, it was a 1962 conceptualized design study for a 2-stage sea-launched orbital super heavy lift launch vehicle.
It sounds so badass when you say it that way.
Right. It would have been the largest rocket ever built. Let's see. The basic idea was to produce a low-cost, heavy launcher, a concept now called a big dumb booster, to lower the cost of operation. The rocket itself was launched. Yeah, the rocket itself was launched from the ocean, requiring little in the way of support systems. A large ballast tank system attached to the bottom of the first stage engine bell was used to hoist the rocket vertical for launch. In this orientation, the payload at the top of the second stage was just above the waterline, making it easy to access.
Oh, they're using the water to hold it up so they don't have to have the gantry. Right. Oh, that's fucking clever.
Yeah.
God damn, man. What are they, rocket scientists? Shit.
So
I never would have thought of that. That's fucking clever. Huh.
Do you guys know where the EU launches their spaceships from? Rockets.
I don't.
That's the word. French
no.
Guiana.
Oh, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, for that reason of it being closer to the equator.
Yeah, but they didn't think about using the ocean as a fucking gantry. Shit.
Nope.
Man, you could just board the fucker with just like a little speedboat. You just gotta... Yep. Shit.
So, yeah, pretty interesting stuff.
So what we should have done... Oh, man, see, I should work for NASA. What we should do... You ready? We'll build an underwater base, okay? And we'll build the rockets down there. And then we'll just put like the ballast underneath the rocket, like when you try to push a beach ball under the water. And then when you're ready, you just fill that fucker with air and it pops out of the ocean. And then, thank you, honey. When it's popped out of the ocean, and then like you just turn the rockets on and it goes. Fucking, I should work for NASA. We'll call it the cork system. It'll pop out of the water like a cork, and then you'll fucking light the rocket and go.
So yeah, good stuff. But yeah, like I said, it's definitely I think the show does a good job of capturing the kind of imagination of that time period as far as space goes, and kind of looking in the direction of where it maybe could have gone if things didn't happen.
So
cool.
why are the Russians building stuff on the moon? I guess, did you say that because of where they landed, they just happened to find water?
So it wasn't where they landed initially. It's just like, this is like a thing that happened later on. They detect water, on the moon. So they're like, oh, well, we can use this as kind of a jumping off point for further exploration of the solar system. Because of course you can turn water into hydrogen and oxygen. So
Have you ever read anything about the Russian space program?
not a lot, no.
Oh boy, it is quite a ride if you want to so to give you an example, I believe the very first cosmonaut, which is Alexei something or other, in order to, because their ships were also staged, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the last stage, they got into orbit, the last stage had to be manually detached in order for the heat shield to be ready to come back to Earth. So Alexei had to get the fuck out of the ship and detach the thing. But here's the thing. At the time, we didn't know how vacuum worked all that well. So his spacesuit was well, we got him plenty of air and stuff, but it wasn't constrictive at all. It was just filled with air and stuff. So as soon as he got out of the spaceship, his spacesuit blew up like a balloon.
Oh shit.
Oh no.
He had to waddle around the ship in order to reach these levers he had to pull, and barely fit back inside the hatch door in order to get back inside. And the other fun
so wait,
thing,
was
go ahead.
it Alexei Leonov? Because he's the first. So outside of that show, I think he's the first human
Russian?
in space to perform an EVA.
That sounds correct.
Okay, so yeah, it's the same guy as I'm assuming the character portrayed in the
I
show.
think
then.
that's, isn't that the first guy who went up?
No, Yuri Gagarin.
Oh, Yuri.
Yeah.
That's right. I forgot about Yuri. So yeah, he's the first guy who had the EVA. And yeah, but yes, apparently the first EVA was quite the adventure. And the other fun thing is because y'all know how NASA's planned reentry landing protocols worked, right? How we got those pods back to Earth.
How are you speaking specifically about that?
What do where they ended up. They always went in the water.
Yeah.
Right. So that was the plan, right? The plan was that they would land in the ocean because the ocean's big.
Right.
Sure.
Well, the Russians are well, fuck that. We're big. So
Yeah.
their shit all landed on land. Okay.
Right.
But it was during the middle of the Cold War. The nice thing about an ocean is that well, if you got a big ass navy and you know where your shit's going to land, you could just kind of go over there and control that area until the thing lands, scoop it up, and you're good to go.
Right.
Well, if your pod, for whatever reason, re-enters kind of weird and ends up in another country,
Oh no.
that could be a problem for the Russians.
Sure.
So the Russians all had guns on their ships.
Nice.
They had a specially designed, shortened, assault rifle that was specifically designed for if they had to basically claw their way back to Russia from behind enemy lines after re-entering from space.
Nice.
Yeah, it was most of the Russian space program was spit and baling wire. It was awesome in that how the fuck did any of these people survive kind of way.
Yeah. All right. Well, that will wrap up my potpourri section for this episode. Any final thoughts for you guys?
This show sounds fun.
You know
It
what
is.
we should do as a if we ever do a Patreon or something, we should watch through Sequest.
Fuck. What?
Why?
Because it's very Star Trek inspired. Have you ever watched that? It's basically Star Trek if it
time
was
ago.
underwater.
Yeah, I vaguely recall that show. I don't
Oh
remember.
man, what a ridiculous show.
No, you know what we should watch? Galaxy Quest.
Oh, we're gonna watch Galaxy Quest. That movie's phenomenal. By Greg Douglas Hammer. What a savings.
Oh god. All right. Well, As always, we will ask you to rate, review, and spread the word of our podcast to everybody else. And, 5-star men we are. So please, if you do rate us, give them 5 stars. And we will catch you next time.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks for listening to Captain's Log Supplemental. You can follow us on Twitter at PodCLS or send us hate mail at podcls3@gmail.com.